in the past, sometime, that the cardinal issue in terms of being with this powerfully is the fact that what it is not dependent upon what it looks like. And what it looks like has absolutely nothing to do with what it is. So if you relate to your experience in terms of what it looks like, you're going to be hopelessly confused and never find resolution. If you relate to your experience in terms of what it is, regardless of what it looks like, then you will find resolution, you will find completeness, you will find empowerment, you will find what you are, you will find authority, you will find all these things. Of course, what it looks like is very obvious and distracting, perhaps, and accessible. But what it looks like also reveals what it actually is if you look closely. What it looks like is really distracting and misleading only to the extent that you oversimplify what you hold it to be, the Cliff Notes version. When you settle for oversimplified descriptions and relate to the way things appear in terms of oversimplified descriptions, you will be misled, and you will be led off into confusion and off on a merry wild goose chase. Whereas even with appearances, if you look at what appearances actually are, you'll discover appearances are, well, all the qualities that I listed on the sheet the first night. Appearances reveal that they are unresolvable, undefinable, absolutely unstable, so on and so forth, which reveals that they aren't anything in particular, even though, again, as we were also talking about earlier, even though there's all this incredible specificity that presents as the way it appears to be, being exactly this and exactly that and so on and so forth, all of that is actually completely indeterminate. You can't actually, even though it seems to be very specific and is very specific, all the specifics themselves are not specific. Of course, physicists are very familiar with this issue in terms of, what they call the uncertainty principle. Whereas if you really look very closely at what anything is physically, you can't actually pin down what it is. And it turns out that that's not a result of sloppy observation. It's a result of what it is that you're looking at is of such a nature that it does not resolve into a single state or a single condition. And this happens to apply across the board. It happens to apply on a macro level of your actual experience as well. So everything looks exactly the way it looks, and it seems to be exactly what it is if you don't look too close. When you look more closely, when you are really with your experience in the way that it actually presents itself, you'll discover you can't actually pin down what anything is, what condition it is. You can't say what color any color actually is. You can't say what texture any sensation actually has. It's all strangely weird and indeterminate and mirage-like, where it looks like it's something very solid when you don't look too closely. When you get closer and you're closer, and it kind of disappears, like a mirage does. All of this is directly discoverable experientially. It's not philosophy or theory. It's just a simple, obvious fact that you can discover very easily in observation. And if you do so, it will reward you with an accurate perspective on what you are and what this is that's going on here, which turns out to be to have some advantages. And if you don't do that, you're liable to continue to relate into your experience in terms of what it looks like and be led hither and yon with no resolution and no consummation and no completion, no anything. The fabled samsara. So what kind of experiences are you having in the retreat here You know, as you play with all this stuff and look at all this stuff, you know, a lot of stuff has been brought up from various angles. Various experiments have been run. You know, you've had it off on your own and you know, had downtime and all that. And so, what's going on with you? Where's the rubber meeting the road? What's the cutting edge of your take on things?
I'll jump in. I'll jump in. And, it's been, what do you call it? It sort of made me feel confident, more confident in finding that doorway that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of where is it meeting the road here, one of the things that hadn't been happening with me is I hadn't been experiencing much in connection with my sleeping experience.
Uh-huh.
And so for the last 2 days, I feel like my sleeping experience is being affected. And it's interesting. It's in a good way and interesting.
That's good. Yeah, that's very typical in the retreat experience.
The sleep, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had really deep sleep,
Mm-hmm.
refreshing sleep,
Mm-hmm.
a sleep that I thought was just, I don't know how to describe it, like empty,
Mm-hmm.
like really empty, which left me with a really refreshed feeling when I woke up.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also twice had a waking experience just after I slept,
Mm-hmm.
which was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 different ways. So I don't know. I just think that that's happened.
Yeah.
And it's brought me to sort of what you said, is that you'll have an experience, and that it's just that experience that one time.
Mm-hmm.
But then it will come again in another way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming again in different ways, and largely through my sleep.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we, in this culture anyway, and probably in many cultures, we tend to be waking state chauvinists. We tend to usually think the waking state is more real than the other states and is where things get done and is where we're really engaged and all that. But that's hogwash. Every state is equally real. Every state is equally important. In every state, as much gets accomplished. It just looks very different. And this is certainly true. Sleep is just as much happens in sleep as happens in waking. And I don't mean quantitatively, I mean qualitatively in terms of your process affecting itself.
Yes, it felt more pure than somehow than while I'm just sitting here thinking it through and trying to process it by thinking about it.
Yeah.
It seemed more pure.
Mm-hmm.
So, since I met you about a month ago, resonated with me from your first talk was about how we think we're choosing things and we're actually not at all. And so I was talking to Jeff, and I realized that a big part of the last month or so is just kind of having this sense of all the serendipity in my life and how things, and so like on a bigger scale in my life, and then on a day-to-day scale, and so when you said stuff about like being exhausted because I'm holding together a certain image, I decided I'm just going to lay down on the floor instead of being the dutiful student that sits in the chair even though I'm uncomfortable and tired. I just thought I'd just lay on the floor.
Good.
And so I think there's something, finally, I mean, I'm old enough, about like not, owning my own authority. I mean, coming and valuing, the transmission that you're giving and the wisdom, but not like kind of going stupid in some way.
Good. Yeah, this is a very important point. This is about you.
Right.
You're here for you. You're not here for me. You're not here to fulfill some role, some idealized role of what is supposed to happen at a retreat. Screw that. It's about you. That's great.
And I think that's been happening a lot. It's like there's this way in which I'm like mad because all these authorities are, I have to do it their way. And I mean, obviously, I'm just creating some kind of a story around that, and to finally just say, I can just be more open to just discovering my own truths as they arise, and of course as they shift and change and alter in each situation, and just being more like taking ownership. It's
That is when you are really engaged in real process, because of course the only thing that's real for you is your own truth. Anything outside yourself that's supposedly out there that you're trying to assimilate or assign value to or something only has value to the extent you actually succeed in assimilating it, at which point it becomes your truth.
right.
So, being on the cutting edge of just your truth, whatever that is at the moment, be real, be honest, be genuine, be what you actually are, be where you actually are, be, authentically what you are being, is the most effective method or mode of living, let alone of spiritual engagement, etc., etc. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, because so many things, like even this afternoon, it's like I was tired, but I wasn't, and so I would doze and I'd wake up, and my habit would be to start getting busy with something.
Yeah.
And I say, I had to like keep checking with myself. Do I want to get busy with that, or do I want to like go and lay down again and doze? And it was, I mean, it seems like a small thing, but it actually is kind of a big thing because I'm like just a very busy person.
Sure, yeah. That's great. That's really great. Yeah, and actually in every other retreat I've done, I've done it less in this retreat for no particular reason. But I usually really stress that this is about you. Do what you want. Do what you need to do. You don't need to conform to any program. You don't need to do anything anyone else's way. If you feel like standing on your head or getting up and leaving, or that's fine. Do it, because it's about you and your process and your authority. This retreat is for you. It's not for me. And for it to be for you, you have to be holding up your end of that, which is being yourself, being real with yourself, and that actually is also the maximally efficient way of utilizing or engaging with any situation or context, like a retreat or like anything in life, just living.
So I noticed that in this retreat, I'm just allowing the energy to have its way more with me, you know, just, and I guess less personal thoughts about how I am.
Good, yeah.
Just allowing the energy to do it. And it's strange, it's tiring in a way because you're not really tethered to the way you're used to thinking, you know, you're sort of just always waiting for the energy, how the energy's going to move you. You know, you're waiting for the energy, what it's going to do. And so you're not going, I don't find myself going back so much in comfortable patterns of thinking, so it's a little, it's kind of, it's new, it feels different.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be, that kind of disorientation when you're with your functioning in a slightly different mode than your habitual mode can be sort of discombobulating, and just that fact can be a little draining.
Yeah.
But as you get used to it, that tends to settle down,
Yeah.
of course. And that's great, because, what you think is happening isn't what's happening anyway, so why bother why bother following it on that basis?
Yeah.
So that's great, just to be with the energy and let it do what it's doing and sort of go along for the ride.
Sure. There's like less commentary about
Yeah.
what it's doing.
That's great.
I'm sort of waiting for it just to see what it's going to do next.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of like that. That's what I noticed.
Yeah, me too. I'm always very surprised by what happens.
Yeah. Sort of like when you're up that close to the edge, you don't even have time to concoct a person. You know, I'm sure that tendency falls away anyway. But you're not making a person all the time. You're just like up in it all the time. And not a person.
I mean, personalizing tendencies sort of comes and goes in various degrees of strength, but it just becomes less and less relevant because it just becomes a small aspect of what's happening if it's happening,
Right.
as opposed to anything that has any urgency or importance associated with it.
When you're talking about that, you're talking about like the sense of I, like the sense of
Maybe, I don't know, whatever, sure, or not, whatever.
So I just, we talked about the jellyfish. I feel like a jellyfish, and I feel like I'm in a hurricane.
Nice.
Bouncing around, like first I'm this and then that, and then I got to do this. How am I going to do this? And then it's not to be done. And then, just
Sure. Yeah.
kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this is. This has no stability. It has no, logic or coherence. It's continually taking a hard left for itself for no particular reason.
And one of the modes is to feel like it does have coherence.
Yeah,
For,
sure.
for a
And
minute.
good luck. And good luck with that.
For a minute anyway.
Yeah, you're going to continually have the rug ripped out from under you. And every instant, virtually, you're surprised anyway. So may as well get real and just, yeah. Yeah. You never know what the next instance is going to be like. You never know what's going to happen. You never know.
Yeah, we talk about that it's always been that way, but it seems like it used to be more steady, you know? It seems like it used to be like...
The memory is merciful. Denial is a powerful force.
You know, going off what Blake was saying, I find that there's, when you go with energy, there's less room, if any, what I found in this retreat, for past and future. Just like planning and all this. But there was a little bit of the thought of like of what I'm going to do after this week when I first arrived. And then the more I stayed with energy, it doesn't even occur. It's like not interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Because so much water is going to be under the bridge before then that you're going to be in such a different place that you don't know what your starting point's going to be to even extrapolate where you're going to go from there. You don't know where there is to know where you're going to go from there. Right? You know, and you can manufacture it. You can imagine what, you know, after the retreat's over, it's going to be kind of like this. But that's all just pure fantasy.
And there's less interest in that.
Yeah,
doing that.
it's not interesting. The present moment is much more interesting. There's a whole lot going on, and it's exciting. It's interesting. It's surprising. It's entertaining. It's weird. It's revelatory. I mean, it's just, you know.
And
This
it's
is where the action is.
And if something comes up, like this moment of like, oh, I should do something, plan something, then it just collapses down into it's just another energy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Nothing but. That's what we got. That's what we got. Just this amazing light show of this energy. It's just endlessly. And that's what it is. Always, 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 always. Never anything but. And it looks like this and that, and it suggests, it implies that it's this and that, and it tries to seduce you into this and that. But it's always just this craziness. Wild times. That's what this is. That's what there is here. Endless spontaneous radiance.
Could you talk a little bit more about what you just said about the experience, and as you have the experience as time goes by, I guess the concept of the idea of I falls away and becomes less and less important.
Well, the more you're with the actuality of experience, the more obvious it becomes how spontaneous and unstructured it is, how it basically reinvents itself every instant in different and wildly unpredictable spontaneous patterns. So any kind of an I or self or whatever is sort of continually fighting against the reality of the fact that there's no stability. So you have to kind of keep recreating it and reasserting it in real time, because it doesn't actually stick around. It gets washed away. You know, it's like doing origami in a hurricane. You know, it's just You have to keep you have to keep.
Holding fast.
Maybe House of Cards in a hurricane's a better image.
Yeah, that's better.
You know, you're gonna be spending a lot of time rebuilding, and to supply any kind of consistency or any kind of persistent orientation, you have to keep recreating it, because the very nature of the flow of events, the flow of actual event, dissipates everything, dissipates all patterns. You know, everything is continually dynamically changing with absolutely no stability. And yet there is this psychological tendency to have an ego structure or whatever, personal orientation and all that. And so this does reassert itself. But that fact becomes less and less important as the more you relate to this in terms of the actuality that it is as this incredible dynamism. So the fact that this mechanism is there to keep supplying the personal point of view it's there, sure, it's real, but it's just not particularly relevant, because it's you sort of see through it. You see its essential irrelevance in the face of the bigger picture of the actual flow of events, and you're with all of it. You're not just with the ego. You're not just with your personal perspective. That's just a real small part of the field of experience, and you're with all of it. You're all of it. You're not just some kind of a self or some kind of a sense of I or something. And the more you sort of relate to that or orient to that, the less you need this little paltry subsystem that continually tends to run.
Is that the part that exhausts you?
Yeah, if you're oriented to it as important, then you're sort of fighting against all of this hurricane of change and spontaneity, and you keep like sort of gotta stay, keep this steady, keep this steady. And it's a lot of work. Whereas if you just go with the flow, it's easy. There's no work at all because it's doing it all, and there's no you that's being impacted by it. You are it, so it's not impacting itself. You are the hurricane, so you're not the hurricanes. Hurricanes don't hit themselves. Hurricanes don't knock themselves down. There's nothing there to hit. Hurricanes are just wind, and wind doesn't hurt wind. And so, in terms of that analogy, you are the wind, and the more you relate to it as being wind and relate to it less and less in terms of being structures that the wind is hitting that you're trying to preserve, the less effort it is and the less of a problem. And so, you get a lot less of energy drain, just in terms of feeling, or a lot less of feeling of obligation or pressure or urgency to try to cling to this and maintain this stability. It's a lot of work being somebody. It's real easy just to be what you are, which may or may not be somebody, but at that point it's unimportant, because it's easy. Just if you need to be somebody, maybe you will be, maybe you won't be, and hey, who cares? It's all good.
As we're talking about this, like I'm thinking about my work, and people come in and how they're doing their life isn't working for them, and so I'm like, obviously I can't really do this while I'm here, but there's this part of me of like, how does I suppose I do this anyhow, challenge people. It's like rigidity of structure that isn't working for them, but it's like, obviously there are very few people that I could get as far out as we're talking about here. They're not ready for that, but it's interesting, this whole idea of just kind of seeing their lives as the structures they're trying to hold on to, and it's not working, and to find a way to flow with whatever's flowing through their lives.
To acknowledge the reality of change and work with it rather than trying to resist it and fight it, it's much less effort.
Hold down the hatches and all that. It's interesting.
It becomes like a really fun game after a while.
Yeah, totally.
I'm laughing this much, because the funny thing of a hurricane is it knocks a if you're just going with this thing, and you just do whatever happens, whatever seems, it's like you're kind of this oneness with everything, or not kind of, but really. And so you have access to everything. So you can be, you can be, I don't know, you can be a tree, you can be anything. It's hilarious. And it's really fun. I think it sort of freaks people out a little. But
Sure.
that's all right.
Yeah. Well, it's not the normal human notion that, you're supposed to be somebody, and if you're not, you're at best a little wild, and at worst a raving nutcase. But that's their problem. Screw them. Yeah. I mean, if you find it practical, keep a lid on it enough so you don't get locked up, but otherwise, who cares? You piss a few people off, you're going to do that anyway. No matter what you do, someone's going to get pissed off at it. I mean, so, right?
Same way though, it's sort of odd, in that you're sort of available to any single identity that you want.
Yeah.
Also, all these other things become what you're thinking about, or there's like this weird psychic energy that just seems to come about.
Yeah. Yeah, the range of personal identity becomes really, really broad. You can be a lot of different people and a lot of different personas, and you have you may have a tendency to manifest convenient personas to meet a situation in a certain way, or maybe not so appropriately. But that's definitely true. The more you relate to reality, the less you're anyone in particular, and the more you're whoever you happen to be at the moment. Which is actually kind of healthy because that's how you are anyway. I mean, all these fixed identities and all that, as we've been talking about, are a lot of work, and they have to be constantly maintained. It's like trying to maintain a house, If you've ever owned a house, they're a pain in the ass. You always have to be fixing something. It has to be repainted and replastered, and the plumbing needs fixing, and this breaks and that breaks. And it's a lot of work, And personas are kind of like that, if you're trying to, preserve them. But if you just use them up like Kleenex, it's much easier. When you need a Kleenex, you pick one up and you use it, and then you throw it away. You don't carry around your Kleenex. Well, some people I guess do, right?
Reuse it.
I totally am experiencing that, and it's so much nicer than me. Yeah, because this old part of me is like, oh, I come from such a dysfunctional family, I'm so angry, I'm such a bitch, It's like, what? It's like just being in the moment is just and it just does itself, and
it's easy. It's fun too.
I'm pretty happy most of the time, anyway, unless I look at that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, my native personality, my root. I mean, the historical Peter Brown's a real asshole. He's really pissed off, really thinks he got a raw deal and was abused by society and hates humans and hates people and wants to basically blow up the world. I mean, just sort of a little mini closet Hitler or something, right? Yes. And that's there. That's part of my mode because it's my historical, aspect of my personality. But it's not who I am most of the time because I don't need to be, and I'm not particularly clinging to or inhabiting that version of myself, that persona. I tend to be whoever I happen to be when I'm being it, of course. And it tends to be situational appropriate, more or less. Yeah.
Well, and you're not even
And they're all real me. They're all really me. They're all for real. But there's an incredibly broad range of them. I mean, I'm a whole lot of different people. I mean, a psychologist would probably think I was either really healthy or totally bonkers because I have such a fluid sense of personality. But I don't have a problem with it. There's no friction or frustration or weirdness about it at all. It's just, hey, whatever.
That's even more healthy from a normal, non-awakened state. I mean, a person who can accommodate and respond to their circumstances rather than reacting with the same persona and having it not work. That's why
Sure.
they go to psychologists.
Sure.
Because you got to ask them, how well is that working for you? I mean, if you keep bumping up against the wall. So personality, a healthy personality is one that's fluid.
I mean, I kind of think so, but I'm not grounded in psychological.
I find you can ever just get super mad. Just is that like I mean, there's an aspect of this. Like I find that
Sure, I get furious sometimes.
Yeah.
Not very often these days. Usually my wife. She knows how to really piss me off. But rarely, you know.
That's why you have partners.
And it comes and it goes, and it's nothing. Who cares? It's like a storm, you know. It's the weather. It blows through, and it's just who cares? Once it blows through, it blows through. Yesterday's weather is gone. It's just gone. It may as well never have happened. It's so gone.
Something I've been sort of almost confused about, because before I had this kind of thing, I was seemingly relatively calm, and now I'm having the surges of like I just get just angry. Mostly it's just when I'm by myself or something.
Mm-hmm.
But usually being around it kind of scares me. I just let it go there, and it's kind of a fun.
Yeah, sure.
Ridiculous
But when you stop orienting to these structures that ignorance consists of, that delusion consists of, we tend to orient to a worldview or a sense of self and all that whole gestalt. When you let go, all of a sudden there's no boundaries, and so especially at first you really slosh around, you really sort of just flash out. But yeah, I think we talked about this earlier. But over time, eventually, to an extent, it tends to kind of find its own sort of center of gravity and settles down a bit. But yeah, for sure, yeah. I think that's generally the case in people who have realization. At first it's like, what's happening here? What's happening? Oh my God, what's happening? This is too weird. It is weird. It's weird as hell. I mean, it's not really weird so much as it's weird by contrast to what we used to think it is.
Yeah.
We think it's supposed to be. It's like it's beyond weird relative to that.
Well, I guess where you begin to see the stretch and ossified personality as the actually weird thing.
Yeah, for sure.
How could that have happened?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the capacity to limit and deny the fluidity and vastness and instability of actuality that delusion can do, that misinterpretation can do, is awesome. It's amazing. I mean, how can this happen? In the face of this obvious what it is, how can we think that it's all of this matter of, sort of stiff, dull, plodding structure that sort of the consensus reality worldview tends to hold ourselves and our situation as being.
I was thinking, like, for me, it's sort of like holding a different aperture, let's say, that you're not totally used to, like, of the energy that's happening. It's like sort of like staying open to it all the time. It's tiring to do that in a certain way. I mean, it's a new thing. I'm usually closing it more often or resting it, but just holding it open like all the time. So, that transition is it's kind of a little achy or something, a little tiring or something. I don't know.
It gets in the knees.
Yeah, right. Just right. Chop the knees, right? Just attack us this strange. That's all.
This morning you said something that touched me.
And I wonder if you'd mind talking about it, amplifying it. You said it does itself.
Yeah. This is most powerfully important and most powerfully true. The present moment's happening on its own. You don't need to do the present moment. You don't need to make it. You don't need to push it out. It's just here. Complete. Everything. Like total. Every single speck of dust, every atom, every leaf, every thought, every feeling just appears spontaneously. It does not require artifice. It does not require effort. It does not require intention. It intrinsically just does itself. And there's nothing omitted. There's nothing left over that's not this self-spontaneity. The entirety of reality appears spontaneously, absolutely effortlessly, in real time, just on its own intrinsic nature. And that includes everything, including things that you may be used to classifying as your things, your thoughts, your feelings, your contrivances, your, ambitions or what have you. They're being done too. So everything just poof, appears like by magic. It's like, some magic wand goes poof, and the present moment is there in its entirety, in its completeness, nothing missing, including everything, every aspect of everything. Subjective, objective, living, dead, all these arbitrary classifications are absurd. Because the whole pattern is entirely complete, spontaneously, every instant. Pretty cool.
So that being the case, the idea of I shows up. There's no reality to it. It shows up, goes away, shows up, goes away.
Well, there's reality of it showing up, in the sense that everything shows up. Your psychological conditions show up, and everything shows up. But nothing is what it pretends to be. Your I isn't really I. I is just this presence, whatever, and so on and so forth.
And there's a knowing.
Sure.
Happening.
Yeah, knowing also shows up. Knowing comes with. Knowing is intrinsic.
To what? To itself?
Yeah. This is knowing. In the same sense that this is showing up, this is appearance, this is also knowing. The appearing is knowing, and the knowing is appearing. We have these different words, appearing and knowing, that implies there's different things, but it's not actually like that. There's only one thing happening here, and it happens in one way. But it includes all its apparent aspects. It includes the aspects of apparition, the aspects of knowing the apparition, the aspects of thinking about it, the aspects of analysis, the aspects of engagement. All of these aspects that are describable in different terminology and from different angles that may imply they're different things, but it isn't really like that. It's just one thing in one way.
So, itself is itselfing.
Yes. Well put.
And any use of the word I is let's pretend.
Yeah, essentially, unless you use the I to refer to the itself that's itselfing.
Okay, so
which is the true I.
When you use the word I, are you referring to itselfing?
Well, yeah. When I use every word, I'm referring to itselfing because I know that there's no pieces. Every word is just okay. How can I put this nicely? There's only one object, so every word refers to it. I means this. You means this. Light means this. Sleep means this. Stupidity means this. Intelligence means this. If there's only one thing...
And it's knowing itself.
Sure. Absolutely. Comes with. That's part of what it is.
Okay, so chair is itself.
Chair is it. Chair is the itself. Chair is I. Every word is every other word. You can put equal signs and put any two words on either side of it.
this, according to that, are both it.
Yeah, exactly so.
And they're only separated by language.
Yes, exactly so. They're only separated by the language you're using to try to refer to them.
Okay.
I mean, that's our perversity, is we use all these different words, but it's a big mistake to think that just because they're different words, they refer to different things.
Right.
Every word refers to the unique condition. This is one condition. It's the only reality, the only thing that exists. It is itself. As you so elegantly put it is itself itselfing. It is the subject, it is the verb, it is the object. It is itself itselfing itself.
Okay.
If you want to, really parse it. And any other word is just plugged into that grammatical structure.
Okay, so if you can you relate to me, connect what we did this morning? What is this? Look, what is it?
Yeah. What is it? Itself. Look is itself.
Must be, but he must get it in a way, in a much more profound way than I get. No?
It's not like that. It's, clear understanding and misunderstanding are actually the same thing, because they're of the same thing. And the way that works can't really be sorted out, so it's a waste of time to try to bother. It all gets down to not confusing imagination with actuality. Actuality is one thing, imagination posits many things. But they're imaginary, because there's only one thing, actually. So when you know that, the fact that the imagination is positing many things is no problem, because you can sort of step in and say, yeah, they're positing many things, but they're actually just aspects of this one thing. And so I can see what's imaginary and what's real. And you can do that too, but you may be in the habit of, or may not be in the habit of confusing imagination with actuality. You may think if you imagine this, that, and the other, you think there really is a this, that, and the other. Well-intentionedly, you don't do it on purpose necessarily, but through discovery, it's possible to discover that that's not the case because it happens to be not the case. And by discovering that, then you will be able to more clearly distinguish imagination from actuality. Like, for example, if I say, the pink elephant that is hovering 6 feet off the floor, is it real or imaginary? You might say, well, it's imaginary. If I say, the objectivity of space, is it real or imaginary? You might say it's real. Or not, I don't know. I'm just making stuff up here. It's not, it's imaginary. Any qualification is imaginary. The hallmark of imagination, anything that is specifiable to any degree whatsoever is imaginary, because reality is not specifiable. It's a very strange property. Itself cannot be specified. It's too weird.
Is distinctionless another way of saying it?
Yeah, it assimilates all distinction. It effortlessly includes all distinction.
Okay. So right now, in the field of vision, there's all of this.
There's only one thing in the field of vision, And anything else.
I got a glimpse of the first night when
yeah, all division within the field of vision is supplied in imagination. It's abstract separation. So I can draw an imaginary line around this portion of this shape and this portion of this shape, and I say that's you, and everything outside the line is not you. Mm-hmm. But all of that's done in imagination. It's hypothetical. The actuality is the monolithic, holistic presence of the field of vision as an entity.
Okay, and then somewhere in that is attention that's going over here and seeing a black shirt.
Sure, attention's part of it too. Attention's just part of the weirdness. But attention is also a continuum. Attention does not actually have any separations in it. So, in other words, when your attention is on something, it may be relatively on something.
Attention, right?
Yeah, attention. when your attention is on something, it may be relatively on something, but everything that it's not on is actually still within the attentional field, let's say.
Okay, so could it be said that in this case, attention is more on the imaginary thoughts of past and futures that are spontaneously arising?
I'm sorry, attention is on imaginary thought?
Attention.
Right. Is what?
Is habitually, is a function of causes and conditions, let's say.
Right.
Habituated to look at the thought distinctions.
Right.
Rather than the field of vision.
Yeah, that may be so, sure. And if that's the case, and you don't recognize that those thought distinctions are purely hypothetical and imaginary, you can easily be distracted to think they're actualities, and all of a sudden you live in a world where there's all these different things and conditions, and what are you going to do about them?
Right. Well, I mean, I get that I can't do anything about them. There isn't even-
But I just, you know what I mean.
So how what can you say to me to help me see the falseness of the distinction of thought?
Okay. The best I can do, I think, is to give you a litmus test for what constitutes an imagination. Anything that's imaginary is specifiable to some degree. You can say you can say, well, more than a label has an identity. The label it has a label that refers to something actual that is differentiable from some other context that is not it. There's an it and a not it, which is specifiable. You know. So if I say you're you, and if I'm specifying you, then that implies there must be some not you, or else it's meaningless to say you're you. So you're you relative to everything else which is not you. So that's a specifiable.
Should we start with the wall?
The wall's fine, yeah. The light. Here's the light on the wall, okay? The light. If the light is the light, then the light, and then everything other than the light is not the light. That's imaginary. That's a sure symptom of imagination, because nothing is actually distinguishable. Nothing is actually separable from anything else.
Does it ever strike you as one-dimensional?
No, it's infinitely multidimensional.
But
in one sense, it's one-dimensional because it's all one thing, but that one thing happens to be infinitely multidimensional. So it's a non-issue in practice.
Yeah.
You know, from the moment you started talking, it occurred to me that there was a need for a step back. There's already an assumption, which is imaginary, that there's this habit of believing your imagination or believing a past or future, and there's this that in itself is an imaginary.
Sure.
And that he sees something you don't see.
As provable by the fact that it's specifiable.
Exactly. And the fact that you think there's something in some way that he's seeing that you're missing, that's your imagination right there.
Sure, that's also
saying
imaginary.
you're still imagining you behind this thing that can't see.
But again, any portion of that that's specifiable is a sign that it's imaginary. If there is a you that is an actual entity separable from specifiable from some not you, then that's a sign that it's imaginary, i.e., not really like that. And if there is a seeing or a not seeing that is differentiable, that's evidence that those conditions don't actually exist. They're imaginary. They're positive. They're hypotheses. So this one litmus test, it may seem like an abstraction, but it's actually very, very powerful. Anything that you can think you know what it is, you can think you know it is something,
Be suspicious.
is a sure sign that it's imaginary, i.e. that it does not actually exist as such in the way you're holding it.
What I was hearing you saying is like one of the divisions that I certainly make up, and I think what you're talking about is like there are those who can like spontaneously see that those definable things are imaginary, and then there's people
Right.
like me who
Right.
aren't very good at that.
Right.
And so therefore it's like part of my
Right.
self-definition is that I'm lacking in some way because
Right.
I can't
Yeah.
spontaneously see
And that and all that's imaginary.
Right. But that's one of the hardest, the myth of me is one of the hardest
Absolutely.
imaginations.
Also, all our self-image stuff,
Check it out.
and self. I mean, the whole gestalt of self-image and self-life and self-context and is. I mean, it's huge and it's all imaginary.
Right.
So,
But
and that's a
the
biggie.
last one we cling to.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's huge. It's really primal, and we completely credulously think it's real. And it's totally not. It just happens to not be. And so there you go. There's a kind of a and there's an issue there.
It feels like
But the issue,
a cliff.
yeah, but the issue is less about self-image than it is about imagination in general.
Right.
And you can tackle it, you can approach it pragmatically much more easily in a neutral area than in other words, if you go to an area that's really loaded and charged, like the self-image stuff, you're walking into the lion's den.
Right.
Whereas if you go to, is that exit sign an exit sign or not, you're in relatively not uncharged territory, so you can build up some chops of discrimination a lot more easily in that kind of a mode, and then sort of sneaks in the back door and sort of kicks in the areas where it's more challenging to grapple with. I mean, that applies in terms of spiritual practice and noticing or whatever. That my recommendation is that applies across the board. It's much easier to get a lot more mileage in building up your spiritual discrimination in areas that are relatively neutral, that are meaningless to you, that aren't charged with any kind of importance. This is my argument with things like Ramana Maharshi's practice. Just ask yourself, who am I? It's a universal spiritual practice. Well, yeah, it is, but it's also the hardest because I is so charged and loaded that you're taking on you're taking on a stampeding herd of elephants that's about to trample you, instead of like taking on like an ant. So instead of who am I, like what is that light? Same question actually, but the light is a non-issue to you because you don't give a shit. So there's no charge, there's no confusion. You don't have to take on your whole gestalt of psychology and emotionality and identification all in one shot. And yet the issue is the same issue, and if you solve the issue there, it gets solved here or anywhere. Yeah. The issue
gets closer and closer.
Yeah, it spreads. It spreads across the board. So the issue is noticing what's imaginary and what's actual, and learning to discriminate between those two. That is the issue. And so do it where it's easiest to do. And when you develop chops, when you develop skill at being able to do that, then you'll find it relatively easy to do anywhere, even where it might be intrinsically harder to do or more difficult because of the sort of gestalt of psychological tensions and pressures and so on and so forth, fears.
Also, the question, who am I, very often gets misinterpreted.
Yeah.
You first have to know what the question is.
Anyway, that's leading into theoretical. Yeah.
I feel like I have to. I don't know if I'm using a trick to do this, or if I'm just creating a new concept. If I look at the light and then I look at the wall and think, first I look and think there's separate things.
Right.
Then to get there, I think that they're both made out of the same thing.
Yeah.
If you could say radiant presence,
Yeah.
or whatever is making the light is making the wall, therefore the same
Yeah.
thing. But I feel like I'm almost creating a new concept there.
Well, you may be creating a new concept, but nonetheless, that is a true observation, intuitively. So, in other words, just because you're creating a concept doesn't mean you're not also having a real insight. It just means that there's added phenomena to that fact. Yeah, when you see the light, you're seeing your field of vision. When you see the wall, you're seeing your field of vision. And the way to really prove that and give that teeth is think of a dream. I mean, in a dream, you can have a light in the wall, and you know the light's not different than the wall because there's no light there and there's no wall there. All you're seeing is dream.
Or a movie screen.
A movie screen's another good example. A movie screen's real good.
Same
Or
exactly.
TV. You know, you're watching a TV show and there's, you know, Seinfeld is joking with his buddies and they're standing in a room. Well, the room is made of exactly the same thing that Seinfeld's made of. Seinfeld's no more or less there than the room is. They're dull just flashes of light on a screen. And likewise, experientially, this is all just radiant presence.
So what?
Radiant presence. I mean, you know, I coined this notion, radiant presence, very specifically and very technically to indicate what experience is made of. Experience is made of something. And everything that appears that you experience is nothing other and nothing more than this that it's made of. Just like a TV show is nothing more than the flashes of light on a screen. It can be a boring documentary. It can be, you know, really hot porn. It can be a stupid sitcom. And it's still just flashes of light on the screen. There's nothing there more than flashes of light on a screen. And likewise here, there's nothing more here than experience itself and the substance of experience. And you may be used to breaking it down to people and objects and situations and events and, you know, gaining and losing and happy and sad and all. But all of that is bullshit because it's not really here. It's being abstracted into the situation in imagination, and what's really here is just the patterns of energy, the objective patterns of energy, just like a movie, just like a TV show, just like a dream. And this is all about getting to the actuality that experience is no more than experience. And when you're experiencing, nothing's happening but experiencing. And there's no what that you're experiencing. You're not experiencing, what did you experience today? I experienced experience. What does it look like? Well, I can't say. It's too weird. I mean, that's the most you can actually say, honestly, about experience. As soon as you start adding more, well, I saw so-and-so and I was in a conversation with them and we talked about this and that. It's like, no. That's all fantasy. It's all over-interpretation. And, I mean, this is how it is. This is how it is.
So there's like some kind of consensus that happens. So like three people got up and started opening windows. So they all like agreed that they're the windows.
No, there's no agreement.
No?
It just happens to be that they did it at the same time, but they did it each individually.
However, the interpretation that several people got up and opened windows also happened, but had nothing to do with the windows and the people opening.
That's what gets weird.
No, but it's not weird.
Experience is experiencing?
Sorry?
Could it be said that experience is what's experiencing?
Yes.
Is that more correct
No.
than
No.
experiencing?
No, all of that is too much. Just experience is. Experiencing, knowing, experiences, experiencing something, all that's way too much. Just this is. Experience is.
And nothing else is, just experience.
Yeah. And all of experience is here, so something must be experienced and something must be being experienced. All of that is fantasy logically argued into existence. It's creating too much structure where there's none. This is just a magic show. You know, and all of these aspects to it and partialities are hypothesized into existence. There's no reality. The only reality is the fact. And the fact is this. And if you want to, you know, substitute the word experience for this, that's fine. The fact is experience. Period. Experience is. You know, as soon as you say experience is being known, that's way too much.
Okay, I get relating to experience energetically. I've been doing it, and I get experiencing, but I'm getting stuck with the field of vision.
Right. In what way?
I'm not seeing one. I'm seeing separation. I'm not. I've had experiences of seeing emptiness in things.
Right. Okay. One hand. 5 fingers, several hundred hairs. What quantity are you seeing? Is it one? Is it many? Is that even relevant? There's as much or as little differentiation as you care to see. The field of vision is infinitely differentiated, but it's just one thing. It's all just light. So don't confuse differentiation with separation of separate entities. Did that make sense to you? So you look at me, you're seeing one body, you're seeing 2 hands, you're seeing 10 fingers, you're seeing several thousand hairs. So how many is me? Am I 1? Am I 10? Am I several thousand? Yeah. The answer is yeah. Not one or the other. The answer is just yeah. You can slice it, it's like a pie, you can slice into as many pieces as you want, but there's no real pieces there. So you know, how many colors am I seeing when I look at you? Or when I look at your hair, what color do I see? Well, it's sort of brown, so it's one color. But if I want to get more precise, I can say, how many shades of brown am I seeing? A bazillion. You know, and if I go to any one of those sub-shades, how many shades are there? A bazillion. So what color is your hair? Well, I can't possibly answer that question. Or I could just say, yeah, it's brown. Which is true. It's arbitrary. You know, because, I mean, this is part of the weirdness of this, is it's infinitely differentiated within itself, but it's all one thing. You know, which is very irrational. And illogical and so on and so forth. It's very contrary to the normal human mode of thinking, but it's true.
Yeah, but I relate to things energetically. It makes sense, the oneness.
Right? Well, vision is energy.
Vision is like, seems to be like so...
Light is energy. Light is nothing but energy. Not abstractly, concretely, it's energy. Anyway, don't worry about it, just play with it. And again, if you have a hard time with that, go somewhere where it's easier, but still interesting, and play with that, and you can build up chops there. You can build up, you know, a surer sense of how to approach it. I mean, this is very challenging because what this is so weird. It is so friggin' weird. And so, learning to be with it as it is can require a lot of deprogramming because we have a lot of anti-weirdness modes built in to create normalcy. You know, and this is not. I mean, this is what normal is, but it's so alien to any human notion of normalcy. And so, learning to be with it as it is can have a kind of a learning curve, let's say.
I just want to run this experience by you. Well, since I don't have a lot of thought sometimes, let's, for instance, when we eating in that dining hall, and there's just so many people there and eating everything and chatting. It just when the thought doesn't arise, just saw all those patterns. So-called people in a different color and talking, but there's no story. It's just the sound and those pictures. And when I look at my plate, there's all different things jump at me. You know, different color, but there's no name, no, just jumping.
Bring your presence.
But the thought, you know, once the thought's coming back, and then you think, oh, so and so is talking. Like
yeah, well, thoughts say that and create that version of things, but it only exists in the thought. It's just hypothetical. It's not actual. The actuality is the presence of the field of energy, inclusive.
it's so interesting because it's never ending. It's always new, always
Yes,
something new, and nothing stays the same.
Yes,
Just
that's
keep changing.
that's part of how weird it is and how slippery it is.
Right. It's so so interesting.
But having a thought about it doesn't diminish it in any way.
Right. It's a separate event, so to speak, or a side energy that doesn't actually have anything to do with the energy that it pretends to be about.
Yeah.
When you think about what you're seeing, you're not actually thinking about what you're seeing. You're seeing what you're seeing, and you're thinking about thought. Thought is not actually about. Thought is just an event.
But the tension moves to the thinking part.
Sure, it might. But again, thought is only the presence of thought. Thought is not the presence of content. I mean, that's another biggie for discrimination. Thought is not about anything. Thought pretends to be about things. You know, I'm thinking about this computer. I'm not thinking about the computer. The thought's claiming to be about the computer, but the thought is just about its own presence. All the thought means is that the thought is there. It's not about anything, any more than the computer is about the window, or the window is about the sky. What's about mean? It just coexists. Thought coexists with the computer, but it's not about it. The computer is a computer. Like I say, in the field of vision, the visual presence of what I'm calling the computer is this, and thought is this. They coexist, but they're not. There's no aboutness. There's no relationality there.
Isn't the thought pointing?
No, it claims to be. It pretends to be.
Sometimes when I saw it, it just felt so funny. I think it has nothing to do with whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yes. Where does it come from?
Yeah, that's why it's not a problem.
Where everything comes from. It's miraculous apparition of energy in the present moment. Everything comes from this. Everything is the same thing and comes from the same thing. Reality spontaneously appearing as a totality. There's no portions. Thought is not special. Thought is just thought. Just like light is just light and sound is just sound, all of which are just different, call it bandwidths of actuality, which appears in real time as a whole.
So what do you think content is?
But it's
Content?
fantasy. The only content is the substance. The content of vision is light. The content of thinking is thought. Thought as the substance of the actual fact of the energetic event of thinking.
The content of sound is waves in the air.
It's not even that. It's just sound. Thinking there's waves in the air is too much. But yeah, basically, yeah. Content of sound is the presence of sound. When you listen to crickets chirping, there's no crickets chirping, you're just hearing sound. And if you see crickets, then you're seeing light. No crickets. Crickets are imaginary. Because they're specifiable. A cricket, you can tell a cricket because it's not like a non-cricket. A cricket is not like a pebble. A cricket is not like an elephant. Which means that crickets are imaginary.
So they're different, but they're the same in that that's what's showing up right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's infinite
focuses on the difference.
Yes, there's infinite differentiation. There's just no entities.
But the focus should be on what's showing up now, if there's a should.
Yeah, I mean the sole event is what's showing up, and it stops there. There's no meaning. There's no implication. There's no description. There's no analysis. There's no nothing. It's just presence, radiant presence.
Would you say the content then would be phenomena?
Yes, the content is the phenomena itself, which is just what it is, and is not in any way susceptible of analysis.
Is the cricket phenomenon?
Yeah, but there's no cricket.
Right.
What the cricket is phenomena.
What the cricket is.
It feels like a magic.
It is
It just
magic.
happens.
It's exactly
Never
magic.
ending.
It's miraculous.
It's the same thing when you create music, when you play music, when you play
Yeah.
guitar.
When you play music, you're not playing it; it's just appearing, and the sensation of your doership is appearing. It all is being done.
So whether you hear music that you think is coming from the radio or whether you're playing it or not, you hear
Same.
it, it's the same. The only difference is you have a sensation of doership.
Yeah.
When you,
So
But
doership,
that's also happening.
the sensation of doership.
That's also imaginary.
Exactly. The sensation of what you may specify as doership may happen to be appearing, just like the sound may happen to be appearing. And when you listen to the radio, the sensation of doership may not be appearing, and the sound is appearing. But none of it has anything to do with each other. It's just whatever appears, whatever is present.
I'm still confused a little about the thought. Your imagination thinks that's a computer.
Yes.
Your imagination thinks it's a thought.
Yes.
But doesn't your imagination connect that thought of imagination to the computer of imagination?
Yeah, it pretends to. But there's no real connection. Just because you say it's connected doesn't make it so.
But it seems like it gives you the imagination of functionality.
Sure.
Because
Operative word there, imagination of functionality.
Right, well that's right.
I can imagine I'm the President of the United States. I can imagine I'm, an alien king. I can imagine anything. Operative word there being imagine.
But one other way that I think is useful to think of it is that it's happening simultaneously. That when she was describing people getting up and all that, the thought people are getting up and opening the windows seem to be occurring simultaneously with the appearance of shapes moving and things,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, we
That's
said
all
that.
that is. There's nothing more. You can't
Right,
come up with
exactly.
any other conclusions
Yeah.
because they're all erroneous.
It seems like it's the operative word here, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's only one thing. There's only one event, and there's endless seeming. The event presents its endless implication and seeming, but it is just itself, and the seeming is just seeming. It's not anything. It's not actual. Seems as if it's this. Seems as if it's that. Seems as if it might be this. Yeah, fine, okay, but it's not. It's just this. But that's what it is, and the seeming is just seeming.
When you stop, you know how we talk about different senses, and then all of a sudden we talk about things that you can't even explain,
Right.
sensations,
Right.
and energies,
Sure.
and relating to your everything in more of
Right. Sure.
a root,
Right.
Is it still imagination?
Is what still imagination?
Like when you feel these waves of stuff and just different
No,
things you can't
specifying it is imagination, but the thing itself is not. And the specifying may be useful if it enables you to notice the thing itself. But the thing itself is not actually the specification, and it's not actually as specified. But it's not nothing.
Not something either.
Well, maybe, sure. It's what it is, to say that. In other words, so we can talk about subtle energies, we can talk about sense fields, we can talk about the presence of thought, all these things. All those are obviously, since they're specifiable, they're obviously imaginary. And yet, by specifying these imaginary entities, the experiential engagement may come to what they actually are.
They're still pointing to it.
Yeah, you could say that.
So your words are pointing towards something that you can't.
Well, they may or may not be. It's only pointing if you successfully get to it.
But it's all the same thing.
What's all the same thing?
Well, when you all the specific things that you mentioned,
Right. It's only one thing.
they're all one thing.
Yeah.
So when you get in a car and you're about ready to leave the retreat
Mhm.
center, it's useful to have an imagination that somehow seems to be in alignment with consensus, right? So you drive off the cliff.
No, because you don't drive by imagination, you don't drive by thought, you don't drive by concept, you drive by direct energy engagement. The same way you walk. You don't walk by imagining how to do it or by thinking about how to do it. You walk by just, do this. What am I doing? I can't possibly tell. So I do it. How do I drive a car? If you're driving by thinking about it, I don't want to be on the road when you're there.
It's weird sometimes when that arises.
Driving is by direct energy engagement, just like surfing is by direct energy engagement, or swimming is by direct energy engagement, or communicating with someone is direct energy engagement. It may look as if we're exchanging thoughts, but it's not. There's presence and energy event, direct engagement. Everything happens by direct energy engagement. Nothing happens by thought. Thought pretends to be part of the actual effective process because it's running alongside of it, narrating and claiming to be doing it, but that's just a claim. In other words, you may be thinking while you're driving, but the thinking that you're doing while you're driving is not what's driving.
So when you just experience this and you don't differentiate,
Mm-hmm.
then it remains empty.
Yeah, sure.
Is that right?
Yeah, when you don't differentiate in imagination, of course there's inherent differentiation, but you can't say what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you're not imagining, when you're not defining your experience, you can't say what it is, but it is what it is. And it's not any less than it is when you are defining it. It doesn't lose anything by not defining it.
Mm-hmm. But then by not defining it, it remains empty.
Yeah, I mean empty in the sense it remains empty of being this or that,
Mm-hmm.
because it isn't this or that. It is the actuality.
And so that's where you want to be, right?
Well, you are. It's not that you want to be that. You are that. It's just a matter, but you have the opportunity to be able to notice that that's the case, which is advantageous because then you're less confused.
So, because I've noticed that emptiness and things, which he's talking about, I've seen that several times, several occasions, that the emptiness, as you were talking about it, I feel it.
Sure.
But it's not nothing.
Right. Emptiness doesn't mean nothing. Emptiness means infinite.
But I also wouldn't call it one thing, though.
Yeah,
I can see how it's like a dream. I can see that it has that
How many things are in a dream?
many things,
Are there?
except for the dream part. The dreaming is
I didn't follow that.
One thing.
I think what she asked me, are you asking like him, the window and the space between him and the window, is it one or is it many? Is that what you're asking?
It's the simple he's asking is it's how many things you see in a dream. I think zillions of things in a dream. It's just one dream. I get that.
Right.
Okay, I get that. But
So likewise here, there's only one experience. All you're actually seeing is experience. Just like in a dream, all you're actually seeing is dream, which is another word for experience. There's nothing here, there's just experience. And experience can be interpreted as if it consists of lots of things, and lots of events, and lots of stuff going on. But the operative word there is interpreted, and interpretation happens in imagination. It's an exercise of hypothesis. You follow?
yeah, so basically there's still interpretation going on about what I'm seeing, even if I'm seeing the emptiness and things.
Yeah, sure. If there's anything that seems to be something at all that's specifiable, that's a sign of interpretation, i.e. imagination.
It's just easier. It's easier to see that in the feeling terms for me. In the feeling, I guess.
That's fine.
It's a lot easier.
That's great.
Interpretation than-
That's great. So work with it where it's easy for you, and it will get stronger, and as you get stronger where it's easy for you, then it will become easier for you where it's not so easy for you now. That's the way that yoga progresses. You find somewhere where it's easy for you to be with actuality, and do that. Do it where it's easy. Why do it where it's hard? Do it where it's easy. Cut yourself some slack. So you do it where it's easy, and you actually build up skill, because it's cumulative, it feeds on itself. The more you notice reality, the more easily and powerfully and deeply you can notice reality. And as you develop this intrinsic talent, let's call it, then that talent begins to be able to exercise itself more easily in areas that formerly would have been difficult, because you didn't have the development of that skill. And as that strengthens, eventually across the board, everywhere, you just effortlessly can see reality. You see what's real, and you can tell what is imaginary. And that's all that matters. Imagination is not evil or even a problem. The only problem is not recognizing that imagination is imagination. Imagination is great. It's just barrels of fun. But it's imaginary. It's not. Yeah. The problem is not imagination. The problem is confusing imagination with actuality.
Yeah, that's where the crutch was like. It threw me off. It's like when you said field of vision. It's just.
This stuff is subtle. It's very subtle, but it's also very, very, very specific, very precise. It's exactly what it is. It's subtle, but it's not nebulous.
It's not what?
It's nebulous. It's weird and multidimensional and infinite, but it's not nebulous. It's exactly the way it is. It's very precisely exactly what it is. This is exactly what it is. And that exactitude may be infinite and indeterminate, but it's exactly that. It's precisely that. It's not vague. It's not sort of. This is exactly this. And it's exactly the way it is this. This is this, and exactly the way this is this. Just as it is. Precisely as it is.
So you're talking just last 3 seconds there or whatever, it made me kind of sleepy. Like, it's like there's something in me that's not, doesn't want to see this. And
that's what happened.
Like there's something other that's trying to see this, and there's this battle going on.
That's exactly what happened. When you hear things that are provocative and challenging to you, and you sort of shut down. And that's cool, no problem at all. But that's a sign that there is some kind of a disjunction there. And then, so don't worry about it. But again, you don't need to take that on head on. Just go to somewhere where it's easy. Go to somewhere where you are making some headway, where you do have some contact, let's say, some vitality, some, actuality, and just work with that. You can specialize. It's totally fine. Because reality is the same everywhere. So if you engage with reality anywhere, it translates to engaging with it anywhere else. I mean, let's say constitutionally your field of vision was really a problem. Every time you look in your field of vision, you just get all confused. So don't work with your field of vision, Work with sound. Work with sensation. Work with, subtle vibes. Close your eyes and look at the patterns. It doesn't matter. It does not matter where in experience you look, you find reality, because there's nothing else present. Experience is reality. So any experience is the perfect place to study experience. And so, that being the case, find a place that's easy for you. Stack the deck in your favor. Instead of taking on your most difficult, field of vision screws me up, so I'm going to pay a lot of attention to it. It's like, why? Why work against yourself? Why make it hard? Make it easy. I don't mean in your particular case. I'm just talking about, in general.
No, but you're right. Opening all the other areas are a lot easier for me than that one.
Yeah, so let it go. Don't worry about it.
Peter, I'm having the opposite rather than the sleepiness which I've been having previously. And suddenly now very wide awake.
Wonderful.
And everything that you're saying, if we create, if we're the one who creates all this, like the Big Bang,
right?
We wake up and suddenly the world is
yes.
here.
Yes. Every instant.
So every single thing that is here is the same thing.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter whether it's empty, full,
Yes.
vision, sound.
Yeah, that's all bullshit. That's all just spin
It's
doctoring.
But it's. I think that's where I was getting hung up because I was trying to look at pieces,
Yeah.
but it's just all here.
Yeah, it's just this. Just this.
And when you were describing, comparing it to like a Seinfeld episode, like it just, made me laugh because we run around in this world. We run around like everything is important, and we're doing all this stuff. It's like the Keystone Cops.
Yeah, totally. Completely. It's absurd.
Yeah.
It's a big joke.
Yeah.
Because it's not actually like that at all.
No. No, because it's just recreated. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just.
Yeah. Proof.
Yeah. And then where does it go? When we go
Where
to
does it
sleep,
go?
where does it go?
Where does it go? It doesn't go anywhere. It just looks different. Just the same place that this moment goes. It doesn't disappear and the next moment appears. It just looks like the next moment all of a sudden. And then you go to sleep, it looks like sleep. You start dreaming, it looks like a dream. You die, it looks like death. You're born, it looks like birth.
But it's all the same.
It's all the same. Yes. Good. Very
So
good.
it never, ever actually, ever transmutes or changes.
Correct.
Or
It never departs from itself. It is always just this. It is always exactly itself. It's eternally beyond space and time. And you are that.
Amen.
holy crap.
Holy crap, yes. Absolutely. Holy crap. Yeah, that's it. That's for real. That's it.
So what is the need to, for example, close my eyes and listen to the water?
No need. Sure, who cares? Those are just tricks to try to stumble on this. And
On the Big Bang.
Yeah, and you stumbled on it, so screw that stuff, who cares? You graduated.
I don't think I graduated. I don't know.
Don't go there.
It's
Yeah, something that's successful.
Take it or run.
no, because this mind wants to go.
So what?
But that's just the mind going. That's fine, and that's this too.
That's the big bang.
That's just this. That's just this.
It's just the water noise and
The mind can go pretend to go wherever it wants, but it's doing it. That's
But
just
it's
this.
part of the Big Bang.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a non-event. It's just more Keystone Cops.
Especially Keystone Cops.
That's good. That's very good. Really good. This is for real. I mean, that's it, right there. That's it. That's really it.
But, and then the thing we talked about yesterday afternoon, about the wow thing, and about how, I had this experience before, and it's like everything is like different, I mean, there's something, but yet it's all the same.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Different and the same at the same time.
Sure.
And it's like this incredible.
And that's this.
Incredibleness.
Yeah, and that's this. This is incredible. But it's just this. It's not incredible compared to something that's not incredible. It's just incredible.
Okay, so now I want to believe this. and
Don't
that's-
believe it.
No.
You don't need to believe it. It is. It is whether you believe it or not. It doesn't
Or
give a
unless
shit.
you want to pinch me to make sure I'm awake.
It doesn't matter. Whether you're awake or not, it's still this. Whether you get it or not, it's still this.
So what happens now?
Same thing that's always happens. This. What's it going to look like? Who knows? Anything. It can look like anything, but it's just there. Always just this. Just poof. Everything. Right now. Right here. Always. Always. Forever. Beyond space, beyond time. Just this. Exactly like this. Always looks different. But
I don't know why I keep looking at you.
I can see in your face that the mind is still trying
The mind,
to find words, to find expression, to
Well,
find something.
the
But
mind
it's just,
doesn't
but
want.
it's just energy.
The mind doesn't want to believe that this is that I'm.
Well, of course, that's the mind. That's energy moving around. You know. So
It's like my mind doesn't think it should believe this, but at the same time, what's belief?
yeah, the mind believing it or not is the mind doing what it does, and that's more this. It doesn't matter. It's not. There's no implication. It just doesn't need to be believed. It is. The present moment is. You don't need to believe in it or not believe in it. What's that even mean? It's just here. Proof. It's here. You wake up in the morning and the world just appears. All of it in one piece. It doesn't appear a piece at a time. It's not like, your bed appears and then the room appears and then the window. It's like just poof. You open your eyes and bang, everything's there. And right now, it's all right here. Just like it is. Just like it happens to be right now. You don't need to believe it or not. Who gives a shit? It doesn't change anything. It's still just this. And that's it. That is it. That's really it. Just that. Whether you get confused about it or not, whether you think about it or not, whether you believe it or not, doesn't matter. It's still just this. That's it.
you said a few minutes ago, Peter, that this is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good word to remember, because incredible means not believable. It's not something that can be believed.
Yeah, you can't believe it because you
There's
can't
no belief
get a
in
handle
it.
on it.
Yeah.
You can't create a
How do you
belief.
how do you believe something that's absolutely
It's
transcendental?
Literally. Literally. Good word.
I noticed that the boundaries between my value system about dreams versus whatever this is, which probably isn't a dream, but and I started like cutting myself slack on the fact that I enjoy various TV shows, and they're just like another form of the same energy moving.
Sure.
I mean, I know they're imagination and they're entertaining, and I had like a lot of like, I'm a bad person because I enjoy my TV shows.
You're not a good New Ager.
That's for sure. And it's just kind of like, why not? I mean, somebody's used their imagination in order to create something that's entertaining. And I mean, I know it's not reality, and yet, you know, it's like it's kind of fun to get caught up in it.
It's
just
totally
like
fun. Imagination is great.
Yeah, as long as you have some part of you that can go, wow, I'm just caught up.
Yeah. The imagination is not a problem. Imagination is wonderful. The problem is not when you don't recognize imagination is imagination. That's which is essentially, in my opinion, the technical definition of insanity. Right. When you believe what you think is true is true. Right. Yeah, but imagination itself is great. I mean, imagination lets us enjoy movies, TV shows. I mean, all role playing, all kinds of things, and it's great fun. You know, but there's a big difference between enjoying imagination and thinking imagination is actuality, i.e. being a crazy person.
And then there's like a difference between like thinking that whatever you're doing in your waking life is like somehow more valuable or more...
Yeah, of course, because that's more imagination, that's more interpretation.
Right.
Any assignment of value to anything is always imagination.
Right.
Because you can't know. There's no perspective.
And it's a relief when you just kind of
Totally.
I get caught up, and then I notice I'm caught up in whatever story I'm telling, and just say, wow, that's...
Yeah, letting go of all is just what a load off.
Right.
It's so much simpler just to let things be than to have to maintain all these intricacies.
They don't like to be maintained.
Well, it's it's the house of cards and the hurricane again. It's a lot of work, a lot of tension. Doing good tonight. This is excellent. This is really good stuff.
So apparent consequences is the imagination. That's an imagination again.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard you say that there are, I don't know how you said it, but like we know that if we jump off a bridge, a high bridge, that we won't be able to fly. Like there are certain...
You don't know that. No, you don't know that. You can hypothesize that. You can say you reasonably expect that, but you can't possibly know. You can't know you can never know what's going to happen. You can never know exactly what your experience is going to look like in any future, whether or not it's following on particular circumstances. In other words, let's look at this. Right now, you're experiencing exactly what you're experiencing, and leave aside for the moment what that is, qualifying it. You don't know what it's going to look like next. You don't know what the next word that's going to be out of my mouth. You don't know what your response to that's going to be, or what you're going to feel about it, or whatever. How can you know? You can't know exactly. You can say, "Oh, I think Peter's probably going to keep talking, and I'm going to answer him." Well, yeah, if you're general enough, you can be sort of accurate, but that's,
Well, that's what I mean by in a general sense. In a general sense.
If you jump off a bridge, you probably won't fly, but you might. There might be a freak updraft all of a sudden. You might suddenly evolve into a different, God knows what. Aliens might hit you with a ray which enables you to, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You don't. You can't. That's a fact. That's real.
Right. And the reason that I'm thinking that you're nuts right now is because of just all my imagination just thinking it remembers all kinds of...
Yeah, and you're thinking that's true. What I'm saying is true. You can have a reasonable expectation that you won't fly, which may turn out to be the case, but you can't know that it's going to be the case. You can't, because you can't know exactly what's going to happen. The Earth might explode in 1 second. It's a fact.
Earlier today, somebody said, I should eat that, or I shouldn't eat that, or somebody made a metaphor about, I shouldn't eat poison, and you said, I think you said, that's not you that knows that, it's some historic intuition that knows you shouldn't eat that, and it's okay to eat that other thing. Isn't that the same thing that I somehow intuitively know not to jump off a cliff?
Right. But you don't know, you know not to jump off a cliff strategically, but you don't know what's going to happen exactly if you do.
Right.
Plus, you don't even have the control over whether you're going to jump off anyway.
Probably not. Sure, you might jump off.
You might jump off, but...
You might.
If I go up, I'm taking you with me.
Just try it. You and what army?
Well, you don't know that you won't jump.
Just gets into a tangled web, I guess.
If you think about it.
Yeah, that's the problem. You gotta stop thinking.
Yeah, the flow of events happens, let's just say. Okay? Period. And it's spontaneous and unpredictable. Absolutely. Period.
Right. Stop there.
Yeah, and anything else in addition to that or about that is just speculation. And it may be well-reasoned speculation, it may be educated hypotheses, blah, 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 but it's still just speculation.
Right, and if you jump off the bridge, you're not going to be jumping off the bridge anyway. It's just going to be radiant presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you splatter on the rocks below, radiant presence.
Well, it's kind of like that whatever it is that knows how to drive.
Exactly.
Yes.
It
Exactly.
also knows how to splat on the rocks below.
That's right. I guarantee you, if you fall from a great height onto rocks, you will know how to splat.
You need to learn to do that.
You don't have to figure it out in advance.
You don't have to learn how to die. You know how to die. And you'll find out when it comes time how easily you know. You'll just be doing it like a pro.
Oh man.
Well, when there's room for people talking and joking, laughing, and all the interaction, but there's just the pure, well, it's happening, and there's no story. And is that people saying it is silent?
Yes.
Everything. So that's what they meant by
Sure.
silent.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Because there's no when there's no interpretation, there's no people, there's no laughing, there's no.
Right.
It just it's happening precisely what is happening.
Yeah. And it's that even if there is people and laughing and interpretation, because that doesn't cancel that. It just exists with it. That is that too. In other words, yogically speaking, you come to direct experience and you let go of all interpretation. Once you have a direct experience verified, you can go back to interpretation and it's still direct experience. And then that's complete liberation. At that point you're no longer doing yoga, you're just liberated. Because you don't need to, because interpretation is radiant presence too.
But at the first step is recognize.
Yes, exactly. It's just it's a strategy.
Right.
You know,
It's kind of a yoga practice.
Exactly. You do that to build up your strength of recognition. When you have sufficiently strong recognition, you recognize it all the time. And at that point you can recognize it in any context. You can be in the thick of interpreting and hypothesizing and imagining, and still it's recognition. It's never non-recognition. But you know, in the yoga, you have to build up strength of recognition, and to do that, I mean, you know, this is part of the, you know, this is sort of back up from that. This is part of the complexity of teaching spirituality, because at different phases, you do opposite things. At one point, you might want to withdraw from everything and be very pure and specialized. At another point, you might want to just let everything go and say fuck it and just go anywhere. And those are opposites, and yet, strategically at different points, would be the advice. So it's a matter of, you have to work with where you are, you have to work with what you need. And so, initially, you need to build up recognition. You have to find actuality, find radiant presence, and then you train in recognizing radiant presence and you train in recognizing radiant presence by recognizing radiant presence. Noticing from time to time, you just, wherever it's easy, do it where it's easy. Yes, that's it. Yes, that's it. And the more you do that, the more it shows you what it is, and the more you recognize it, the more you build up skill and certainty of, oh yeah, it's radiant presence. You don't need to go to that or reach that or work with it or okay, now I got it. It's not like that. It's just, yeah, of course, obviously. You know, it's a no-brainer. It just becomes completely self-evident. And at that point, then the next phase, so first you build up strong recognition, and then there's integration, where you just relax and let that spread across the board. So even in areas where it's hard, you recognize it there too. So you go to fantasy, you go to interpretation, you go to your neurotic personality and your fixations and all that, and yeah, that's radiant presence too. And then that's what liberation looks like, because however you are with experience, it's radiant presence. It doesn't matter. You can be neurotic and crazy and caught up in things and stuck in fantasizing and all that, but it's like Teflon. It's just radiant presence. So at that point, it doesn't matter what you do. because you can never leave it. You can never leave radiant presence, and you know it with absolute certainty. Because you train in that recognition to earn that knowing, so to speak, by letting its certainty permeate you.
I think during the past 2 days, I have the taste of what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm starting to understand what you were saying,
Good.
what you were meaning.
Good.
You know, without the direct experiential thing,
Yeah.
there's no understanding.
No,
There's
it's
no
all
way.
about experience.
Yeah.
It's just experience. Experience alone is powerful.
On Friday night, or I guess it's Wednesday night, when you were using the word actual, it's like I didn't know what that word meant.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's starting to permeate
Good.
like what it means.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
like
important.
You kept using it, and it just felt like this buzzword, actuality.
Yeah,
What's
it's at first it sounds like an abstraction, isn't that funny?
Yeah. It sounds like,
It's the one thing that's not an abstraction. It sounds like an abstraction.
and then today I was like thinking, man, this is so practical.
Yeah.
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 Actuality is what is actual, what is here, what is present. This is actual. It's just present. It's real.
I mean,
It
it
is.
really, like, that was like one of those, this put me to sleep.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Really good work tonight. Y'all are doing great.
What an interesting image.
So is this the whole thing?
Yes, this is the whole thing.
It's not a room within the whole thing.
No, this is the whole thing.
This is the whole thing.
When you go to sleep, that's the whole thing. When you dream, that's the whole thing. Because what it is not dependent on what it looks like. It bears no relationship to what it looks like. What it is the whole thing. And it can look like rooms or universes or, a tiny little box. It doesn't matter, it's the whole thing. Because the whole thing isn't in what it looks like. What it looks like appears because of the whole thing. Like the dream appears because of the sleep. The sleep isn't in the dream. Sleep isn't contained by the dream. The dream appears because of sleep. The sleep is the whole thing. So the dream, no matter how partial it appears, is the whole thing. Because it is a symptom of the sleep, which is the entirety.
So everything is always radiant presence.
Yeah.
It always looks different.
Yeah.
And if there's a method, it's to recognize the big it rather than the parts.
Yeah. And that the parts are abstractions.
Well, yeah. Okay.
It is actual, the parts are abstractions.
Meaning they're just ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're hypothetical. It's like as if. You could say as if, let's suppose this is a room, let's suppose that these are people, let's suppose, that's the as if part. But it's all, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's all supposition. And the supposition is abstracted within and upon the actuality of the experiential presence, i.e. the radiant presence, which is the only thing that's really here. All the hypotheses and all that are just, exist solely because and based upon the actuality, which is the only actuality.
When we were talking about the difference between listening to music and performing music, and the doership, the feeling of doership is an imagination, but
well, it's not an imagination. That it is doership is an imagination, but the feeling is actual.
okay, that's what I thought. There's a different energetic thing
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah, energy is real. Energy is present.
Right.
But what that is and what that's about is all
Right.
hypothetical, all interpretation. Yeah.
So I feel like I'm floating through this. But how can I be floating through this if I created this and it exists in me?
There's no in and there's no you. It's just there. And this is what's this sitting on? It's floating. What's this sitting on? What's holding this up? Where is it?
It's nothing's holding it.
Yeah, nothing's holding it up.
It just. So the feeling like floating through it is just
It floats.
phenomenon.
Yeah, and it floats through itself. It is a floating. It is a floating, flowing, shining. And you are that.
So feeling like I'm floating is really just a description of.
Yeah.
Okay. The
Yeah.
whole thing. Yeah.
Sure.
But it's very odd
It is very odd.
to feel like you're floating through something that is floating through itself.
Doesn't matter. But, there's no limit to the weirdness that this is. And so that it should present in strange and contradictory and bizarre ways is no surprise.
This makes no sense.
This makes no sense. This makes absolutely no sense. Let's get that straight. Reality makes no sense. It's fucking weird. It's completely irrational. And when I say completely irrational, it's not hyperbole. I mean, it's completely irrational. It makes absolutely no sense. It's entirely beyond description. It's entirely beyond analysis. Logic does not apply to it. It is exactly the way it is, and that just happens to be the case. And you can't say what that is, but it is the case that it is. And what that is endlessly weird. Endlessly weird.
And words don't work.
Words don't work. So trying to figure it out is just liable to be confusing.
It takes you back into the
Yeah.
grasping and the...
Yeah, because it's just weird. You can't figure out weird. Weird ain't gonna go. Figuring out is not a good mode to try to address weird. It just doesn't.
No, this mind wants to make it, into a belief or grasp
Yeah.
it or something.
Yeah, and that's fine. Let the mind do what it wants, but that's just a small energy event in this. The mind can just think all it wants, and you don't need to stop it. Who cares? An image I have of the mind is, imagine you're sitting in a house and you have an old, crazy, demented grandmother who lives in the back room, and she's, pretty much invalid, but she just sits back there yelling and screaming all day, all sorts of bullshit. And, she's yelling and screaming, but it's not about anything. It's not like you have to pay attention to it or figure out what she's talking about, because she's not. She's bonkers. And that's what your mind is like. Your mind is like the crazy old woman in the back room that's yelling and screaming insanities. It's not like you can't stop it, but it's not about anything, so you don't need to follow it or give it much attention. Just let it entertain itself, and it doesn't get in the way of anything else because it's in the back room. It's a little noisy maybe, but it's not actually in the way of things.
Right. It's like
This-
walking through the loony bin.
Yeah, sure. You watch the loony bin, and every now and then you hear weird moans and screams from some room or other. But they're not about anything.
A lot of chatter going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's not about anything. It's not like you need to stop and listen and figure out what they're talking about, because they're nuts. It's gibberish. And your mind cannot think a true thought. Your mind, from the conceptual point of view, is completely insane. In no way addresses reality. In no way is engaged with actuality. It manufactures bullshit. It spews endless fantasy and delusion that's not about anything. It claims to be about something. It's really important and it's really urgent and it's about this and that, and it can go on and on and on about all its intricacies, but it's all just nuts. There's nothing there. It's not about anything. Because this actuality has no aboutness. It just is. It is exactly what it is, exactly as it is, and there's no about it. It's too weird to be anything about it. You can't figure it out or describe it or say anything about it. But you can know it. You are it. You can feel it. You can be it. And in that, you can know it very profoundly. But you can't ever say it. You can't ever think it. You can't ever describe it.
But I'm floating in it.
You are floating in it. You are it. It's floating.
It's me floating in it.
Mm-hmm. You are. That's literally true. That's very good. You're doing great tonight.
That's a belief.
And a damn good one.
He's right.
I don't know where this shit comes from. It just comes out.
Yeah.
How can you know?
What's that?
How can you know where anything comes from?
I just can't help it.
Anyway, it's about quitting time, so why don't we knock off? And I'll see you tomorrow at breakfast and at 9 if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.